Hi, everyone, and welcome to Crime in Court. Kind of been MIA for a little while, and I apologize. I've been recovering from surgery, so I'm kind of getting slowly back to recording. But I definitely wanted to get this video out to you guys because in the Menendez brothers case, there has been a lot going on. So we're going to go over some media statements that have been taking place while I've been recuperating and haven't been able to get these out to you guys. So within the last week or so, we're going to go over some statements from the new LA District Attorney, Nathan Hochman, and then we're going to go over some statements from the Menendez attorneys as well. So we're going to hear from Brian Friedman and also Mark Garagos. So, and this is going to be voiceover only because I'm still recovering and it's hard for me to like sit up and do things. So it's just the way it's going to be as we move forward here. So let's get to the first video, which I have for you. Uh, this is going to be Nathan Hochman talking to what's his name? Lester Holt with NBC News. This is Dateline. He did an interview with Dateline. So let's listen in on this.
Amount of pressure you're feeling in the Menendez case?
It's not pressure. And this is why you sign up for a job like this.
The job, leading the nation's largest district attorney's office.
Hi, Nathan Hochman.
Nathan Hochman was swept into office amid a voter backlash against what critics saw as soft on crime policy.
I just want to say, I can't believe Arnold Schwarzenegger is still a governor of California. Like, how many years has he been the governor? Because he was just swearing him in. He's looking older now with his gray beard and whatnot. But anyways, I can't believe he's still the governor. So yeah, these captions don't even match up. So I'm gonna just take them off because they're distracting. So sorry about that.
Was swept into office amid a voter backlash against what critics saw as soft on crime policies of his predecessor, George Gascon, and rising violent crime. Your predecessor is referred to as a progressive. What does that make you?
So what it makes me is common sense. I reject the extremes of both decarceration, which predetermines that certain crimes and certain criminals would not be prosecuted, notwithstanding the facts in the law, and also the other extreme of mass incarceration.
Hochman, a Republican turned independent, vows to operate from what he calls the hard middle, including in his approach to the Menendez case, in which the previous DA asked a judge to resentence the brothers, who are currently serving sentences of life without parole for the 1989 murders of their parents.
The pace is expeditious because we have a January 30th hearing. And I'm reading thousands of pages of confidential prison files.
Hochman not tipping his hand as to where he may land on the case, but confirming personnel changes among the team that led the resentencing effort. Have you removed people who were directly involved in the Menendez case?
So one of the people is actually will no longer be with the office, and I will be speaking to everybody who's ever touched the Menendez case in the DA's office.
We refer to the...
I'm going to chime in here and say that I believe it was 2 or 3 individuals in the DA's office who actually were gunning for this, resentencing slash letting them go, letting them go with, time served type of mentality, was those individuals are no longer with the DA's office. So it's not looking promising with DA Nathan Hochman as far as the Menendez brothers hope for getting out through means of the DA. So remember George Gascon, the LA district attorney who just lost his bid in the last election, he was gunning for getting the boys out, but he waited way too late to get his filings in and to do this because it happened right at the end of his term. And because he wasn't voted back in, and this newcomer comes in and he's not for releasing the brothers, it puts a damper on things. But don't lose hope because there's other opportunities. We still have Gavin Newsom, who could potentially still offer clemency. And we have the resentencing hearing, which Nathan Hochman has nothing to do with. Like, he can put his um, recommendations in, but George Gascon has already put in his recommendations. And you can't really, I mean, you can't change the record. He's already put in his reasoning as to why the brothers should be released. Nathan Hochman can come in and say, well, I don't think they should be released for these reasons, whatever, whatever. But ultimately, resentencing the boys, changing it from first degree homicide to manslaughter would allow them basically to get out with time served. So even if Nathan Hochman doesn't want to let them out, they still have that opportunity with the judge and Gavin Newsom. So there you go.
Them as the Menendez brothers, assuming they're always a package deal. In your view, as you do your review, do you leave open the possibility that their cases could be handled differently, that they would be split?
Well, you're absolutely correct. While they're called the Menendez brothers case, there's an Erik Menendez case and a Lyle Menendez case. There's actually two different victims. There's a Jose.
This has gotten people in an uproar, and it does make me kind of hesitant. I mean, this whole interview makes me very hesitant with Nathan Hochman. I don't have any faith in him, I just want to say. But to look at the brothers as two separate cases, to actually fathom the idea that one might get out and one might not is insane to me. They were tried together. They had the same conviction, the same in the second trial, they had the same jury, and um, they committed the crimes together, the same. I mean, so I think that they have the same everything. I don't know why he would be looking at them as separate cases. They had the same judge, the same, I just don't understand. Granted, they have different attorneys, but now in the appellate process, they are filing as one case. So they don't have two separate cases going on for them. They may have two separate inmate case files, blah, 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 but the actual habeas case is one case with both Erik and Lyle's names on the court documents. So I don't know why he would be looking at it separately. It just doesn't make any sense. And a lot of people feel this way. And it would be horrific if one stayed and one went home. Just awful.
Menendez, the father, and Kitty Menendez, the mother. So we will look at each case separately, which is the way they actually should be handled. We'll look at each victim separately, which again is what the law actually demands us to do in reaching the ultimate decision of a resentencing.
Have you thought about what message it would send if you were to endorse resentencing in this case?
It's not so much a message, but a precedent, because the precedent of whatever we do in this case will apply to future cases that we deal with requests for resentencing. We have to be consistent.
Do you wish this was not on your desk?
Do I wish it was not on my desk? You know what? You're dealt the cards you're dealt with in this life. And the Menendez card has been dealt. It's a card that we will deal with.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and...
I personally feel like he likes the idea that he is on this high profile case, and he likes the idea that he's this high profile LA district attorney now, and the power is on him in his hands, and he wants nothing to do with letting the brothers out. That's my personal opinion, and that's what I'm speculating based on what I've seen. All right, so this next interview, this is a TMZ interview. The Menendez brothers' family lawyer, Brian Friedman, is pretty ticked off about what George Gascon had to say on Nightline, or Dateline, sorry, Dateline. So here's his response, which I believe came out like the next day or very recently after.
The new DA was on television today saying, yeah, I'm more than willing if the family members want to meet with me. I found that a little different than saying, I'm going to call them and ask to talk to them. It was like, yeah, if they want to meet with me, I will. And, when you kind of listen to that, does it not feel like maybe the die is cast here? I mean, there are signs.
Harvey, I think what's most troubling is that, these are family members, most of which who have traveled, some great distance
So just to recap, Nathan Huckman said that he is willing to meet with the family members, but he has not yet. And so let's have him ask that question again, because he made it seem like he had met with all the family members, but really he only has met with the one family member that doesn't want the brothers to get out. So let's listen to that question again, knowing that context.
The new DA was on television today saying, "Yeah, I'm more than willing if the family members want to meet with me." I found that a little different than saying, "I'm going to call them and ask to talk to them." It
Yep.
was like, "Yeah, if they want to meet with me, I will." Um, and when you kind of listen to that, does it not feel like maybe the die is cast here? I mean, there are
Mhm.
signs.
Harvey, I think what's most troubling is that these are family members, most of which who have traveled some great distances to meet with the DA's office on multiple occasions already. On CNN today, he actually made the representation that he had invited the family members, all of the family members, to speak with him or meet with him. And that's just simply not true. It was the purpose of my letter and my email on Saturday.
So Nathan Hockman's already starting off uh, his reign in office as a liar. He's going on CNN and telling them that he's invited the family members to come meet with him. And that is unequivocally not true coming from the Menendez family attorney.
Night. It's the purpose of doing this. He has not reached out, and that is concerning. There's other troubling things, also, in the interview with Deadline, DA Hockman said, that it was simply untrue that frankly, that boys and girls and men and women and sexual abuse was treated differently in the 90s. That's completely untrue. There, in 1991, the legislature had incorporated and created Evidence Code Section 1107, and what that was is that was called battered women syndrome. It wasn't until 2004, long after both these trials, that the
Hmm.
legislature changed the law to battered person syndrome. So
Yep.
society, obviously treated, male sexual abuse very different than sexual abuse.
They didn't even acknowledge it. And if you recall, our lovely Miss Pam Bazanich from trial basically stated the very, very false statement that boys cannot be essayed by men, that they can't be AR'd because they don't have the equipment. That was exactly what our dear old Pam Bazanich said, which makes me so freaking angry. Sorry, but it does.
Of women and girls, and that's just a black and white statement. So for DA Hockman to come out and say, what are you talking about? We prosecuted a number of cases involving boys. That misstates what the issue is. The real issue is, did society treat it differently? Was the evidence let in? And it wasn't let in.
And he's absolutely right. The evidence was not let in the second trial. There were over 50 something experts and witnesses that Leslie Abramson and Jill Lansing combined had called to the stand to speak in reference to SA and trauma and, what happens to you traumatically when you are psychologically and physically SA, all those things. What could happen in your developmental stages and why they explained very well why the boys could have felt in fear of their own lives. But that whole part did not come into the second trial. All those 50 some witnesses didn't come in. And yeah, so I don't know. Um, Hold on. Let me fix the screen. It's all weird. Okay, sorry. So this is the one of the cousins of the brothers. So this is Anna Maria Beralt, right? Anna Maria Beralt. And here's a message. She came out, what day was this? I don't know how to figure it out. It says 2 days ago, but might have been 2 days ago. So she came out and posted this video because of the whole, they hadn't, because of Nathan Hockman's own big mouth going on CNN and saying he invited the family. The family was like, whoa, 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 no, you didn't. And now they are going to meet with the DA. So here is her message stating that much.
Happy Sunday morning. Okay, I wanted to address 3 things real quick because I keep getting, well, no, 2 things that I keep getting contacted about, and then one that I'm just going to throw on you. Okay, first thing, because I was super whiny about not being in touch with the DA's office and him only reaching out to Milton's attorney, it has been widely reported, and I do want to confirm that we have been in touch now with the district attorney's office, and we are just finalizing details of when we're going to meet with him and make our voices heard. So there's that. Okay, second thing is I got a lot of messages like over the last couple of days saying, hey, are you only making videos for subscribers now? Like, what's the deal? So this week I did actually only make videos for subscribers.
Okay, I don't think that has anything to do with us, but just that portion there where she does say that she confirms the family is meeting with the new DA now. So they have to go back. All these people, some of the family members who are elderly and it's hard for them to get around, and may have some health issues, they all have to fly back out to LA because this new district attorney doesn't give a crap about their wishes and basically was like, nah, we don't need to meet. We're good. Even though he's going around saying, yeah, we already met or I have the invitation out there. So he's a liar. He's a lying liarson with his pants on fire. So another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, this is just a quick announcement, was that the DA's office has asked for an extension to the habeas petition. Remember, they just Gascon did ask for a uh, an extension recently. This has been going on for a long time because this habeas petition has been basically they're just kicking it down the line longer and longer. When it's like, come on, guys, let's get our crap together in the LA DA's office so we can argue this habeas petition. But for whatever reason, they want another extension. Well, this time, they have a new DA, so obviously it might make sense for this, but it should have been, I think all of this should have been dealt with before George Gascon even left office. He should have released them, but whatever. That's my opinion. All right, so I just wanted to let you know that they are asking for an extension to reply to their habeas. This was filed in May of 2023, and we're going into the year 2025, and the brothers still have not had a chance to effectively argue their habeas because the LA district attorney can't get their crap together. So, just saying there. All right, hold on one second. I'm going to be back with a different screen and we will watch an interview with Mark Garagos, who is the brother's current appellate attorney. He was just recently on the Megyn Kelly show. It was a very good interview, and I just happened to be watching the Megyn Kelly show when he came on, and I was like, oh, this is great. So hold on one second, and we're back. Okay, so here is, like I said, Megyn Kelly happened. Megyn Kelly, she used to be, I think, on Fox or something. I can't remember where she was. Well, she used to be. She's a journalist, reporter, um, anchor. She happened to have Mark Garagos on her station or her channel, her YouTube show, and it was a really good interview. So here we go.
Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and a special Kelly's Court Christmas episode. This kicks off our True Crime Christmas series for 2024. Nothing says Christmas like true crime. And we have two Kelly's Court favorites to dive into many important cases with. Jay-Z, Diddy, the Menendez brothers, and much, much more. Joining me now, Arthur Aidala, trial attorney extraordinaire and managing partner Aidala, Bertuna and Caymans, and host of the Arthur Aidala Power Hour on AM 970 in New York. Also with us today, Mark Garagos, also extraordinaire trial lawyer and managing partner of Garagos and host of Reasonable Doubt, which is a great podcast. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Instagram. We can finally exhale. Work can at last be done on the, and that debt is a house of cards. So it can be important to into an eye hold. How you doing, Mark?
There we go.
I couldn't be better. How about you, Megan?
I'm great. I love the holidays and I love true crime. So this is everything that I adore coming together. There's actually a lot going on. You never know whether, we go to these true crime Christmas specials, which always do well. People are like us. They are also into these stories. Whether you're going to have an embarrassment of riches or a paucity of results. And I got to say, it's the former. Let's kick it off with Mark's biggest current case. Probably not, knowing Mark, but it's a big one. It's all over the news. Mark and I have debated it before. Marsha Clark came on and she did not agree with you that the Menendez.
Marsha Clark, for you young folks out there who are newer to true crime and don't know, Marsha Clark was the prosecutor, one of the prosecutors, who was trying to convict OJ. Obviously, she did not. He was, you know, that was one of the big cases around this time too. So the first trial happened. The first trial for the Menendez brothers happened in '93. And then the second trial happened in '96. Somewhere in between was the OJ case. And so Marsha Clark, and that was the other high profile case that was being brought to light and being televised. So, in that whole case, the OJ case was televised. So, but anyway, she's saying that Marsha Clark does not think that the brothers are going to get out.
Menendez brothers should and possibly will be released. Something bad happened for your clients since the last time we spoke. And that badness was the LA District Attorney, George Gascon, who was pushing to have them possibly let out early, lost his election. Wah, wah. And the new guy, Mark, is not a fan of this push and keeps naming you in the press and saying you've been misleading everybody into thinking that they didn't get a fair trial second time around, that they weren't allowed to discuss the sexual abuse allegations, which he says they were. He said they argued everything you want them to have been able to argue, and the jury rejected it. And so he's calling you out, which suggests to me he's not on board, and they weren't home for Thanksgiving, but they may not be home even for Valentine's Day at this point. What do you think?
Well, look, he has said various things. He has now, as we are discussing, has extended an invitation to meet, which is obviously something that I've been waiting for. And I will point out where he is wrong, and I will help educate him on the law. And the law is, and the facts are, that in the second trial, imperfect self-defense was not allowed as a jury instruction.
Explain what that is.
That alone. Imperfect self-defense is where you get a jury instruction where the jury can basically say, we're not going to vote for murder. We're going to eliminate malice based on imperfect self-defense. And that is the idea that you felt that there was danger because of the syndrome that you were exposed to. In this case, back in the 90s, we had battered women's syndrome. And I've talked to you, Megan, about the fact that I tried murder cases in the 90s where I used the battered women syndrome. Back then, it was not extended formally by the legislature to others besides intimate partners. It was formally in 2004, the legislature expanded it. So the second trial, which the evidence started 8 days after the OJ acquittal, there were some dramatically different rulings, and those rulings are what affected the result by the jury. That's on the habeas. Then on the resentencing, you have and he's talked about it, he being Mr. Hochman, that he has looked at thousands of pages of C files. C files are the correctional files. It's everything that these two gentlemen for the last 35 years, actually 30, because for the first number of years they were in the county jail, it's everything they've done in prison. And I will tell you that based on my investigation, based on the DAs who were involved in the investigation, who filed the resentencing memorandum, it's the most impressive book of accomplishments by anybody who, especially it's amplified when you think about the fact that as of 2005, they had no hope of ever getting out. They could have gone in one direction. Instead, they went in the direction of starting programs.
Okay, so there's two different.
We've talked about all of that. The fact that they've known since 2005 that they don't have the possibility to get out of prison. Yet they have reformed their lives. They have created all these programs within the prison systems that they've been in. So even when they were separated, they were doing things to better their inmates and better themselves. And so they have definitely a very good record, both of them individually, um, from their time served in prison. And that goes a long way in the resentencing for a judge.
Avenues that you're talking about. You're trying to say the underlying trial was unfair to them. They weren't allowed to present fully the defense of imperfect self-defense, meaning we'd been abused by our parents. We actually did get ourselves worked up to the point where we thought we were going to be murdered by them. That's why we murdered our parents on the night that we did, even though they weren't rushing after us with loaded guns. We rushed after them with loaded guns, given what we believed in our heads. That's one lane. And the second lane is model prisoners. They've been there for a very, very long time. They've done everything they can to rehabilitate themselves in the eyes of the law and the prisoners and so on. And so either one of those tracks can get them out early. Now, here's Nathan Hochman, the new DA. This is fascinating to me. He spoke with Deadline, and now he's giving an interview to NBC as well. But here's what he said in part. Once I got up to speed, first he says, once I get up to speed, I'm going to call Mark Garagos. I'm going to invite him to come in, and I'm going to let him make any level presentation he wants. But he, so far, doesn't seem impressed with the argument. He says, look, the assumption that the second trial, that the issue of abuse wasn't raised, he says that's because of Mr. Garagos' mantra, which the media has repeated. He said Erik Menendez testified in the second trial for 7 days, probably, if I had to guess, close to 40 hours of testimony where he went into great detail, as he did in the first trial, incident by incident by incident, between the ages, I think, of 6 to 18, of what his father had done to him. So the notion, again, that the mantra, that the sexual abuse was not explored in the second trial, that the judge kept out all the evidence, actually isn't true. Question by Deadline. So why do you think that's become so accepted? Hochman, I mean, I've been doing this for 34 years and I've seen it. The media is in search of simple narratives, conflicting narratives. And so it adopted the Garagos narrative, which was smart, very creative. It's basically that the trial was all about sexual abuse, that their response was because of sexual abuse. It's that a conviction was only attained because the evidence of sexual abuse did not occur in the second trial, but did occur in the first trial. And therefore that the underlying conviction is wrong and should be fixed. Very simple narrative. What makes it a little bit more complicated, and that's why the media would have to deal with additional work, is what he says. And finally, he goes on to say, knowing the Garagos narrative is absolutely wrong. The issues that we will be looking at for the trial will be whether or not these two young men faced an immediate threat to their life, why they got to that point. Mark, I don't like your chances suddenly.
Well, I really do like my chances because, mind you, this is somebody who has practiced criminal defense. He represented, I believe, the Lee Baca, who was the sheriff here, who was charged federally. So once I point out to him where he's wrong, frankly, on this, once I show him and walk him through, and as you said, he's welcome to a fulsome presentation, which I plan on giving him. I think he'll change his mind. I think he'll
specifically?
understand.
Can you speak to that claim that they were allowed to testify to all the stuff that you said they were?
Can I make Mark's case for him?
Yeah,
As a
go ahead.
outsider.
Go ahead.
First of all, I have to just say, because Mark talked about battered woman syndrome. And since it's a special edition of Kelly's Court, I'm going to brag. I actually, my very first murder case as a criminal defense attorney, allowed for the first time in the United States of America battered woman's syndrome to be used against a man. And they were two gay men, and one killed the other based on a series of abuse and all kinds of abuse: financial abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It had never been before anything more than husband and wife, and this expanded it. And Megan, it's been used very successfully, not to get people off, not to get people found not guilty, but as opposed to life in prison or 25 years in prison. It's a tremendous mitigating factor, reduces sentencing exponentially from life in prison to 15 years. In my particular case, when I came into the case, the prosecutor said, all right, Arnie, I'll give you 22 years. I mean, my guy totally did it. There was no issue about it. I'll give you 22 years. And then I raised battered woman syndrome. That's not going to work. I'll give you 20 years. And then the judge put on 3 experts who said battered woman syndrome is not just between a husband and a wife. It can be through very different relationships. And it is gender neutral. It's all about control and power. He wanted to plead to 6 years. So that's where
what year
it
was
matters
that
so
argument?
much.
What year was that?
1999.
It's exactly.
See exactly what we're talking about. They have not given battered person syndrome any kind of weight until more recently. We have not understood the we, as in the general population, have not understood the effects of trauma, the effects of SA, CA, all the types of A. Um, they they weren't widely known. Obviously, it was known in psychology because all those experts knew in the 90s, that all the experts that were called to the stand, but it wasn't widely known to the population, especially male on male, father on son, CA and FA. It just wasn't talked about then. It was all kept in the dark.
exactly right. And that was the first time they had expanded it from the idea exactly.
Making a
And
fist
I'm
for the
telling you,
listening audience.
until the 2000s, this was not something that was recognized outside of the what we used to call intimate partners.
Well, actually, I have my own story on this because when I went to law school, it was between 92 and 95, and I did a little internship for a solo criminal defense practitioner, Mark Garagos. See, I wasn't always prosecution minded. And
I'm going to have to stop calling you my pro host. So
I know I don't like it. I object to my nickname. Anyway, this guy had me on this case where it was two lesbians. So it was kind of similar to your argument, Arthur, where I was saying we should argue battered woman syndrome on her behalf. And there was a woman syndrome and there was a woman there. It just happened to be that her, deceased partner was also a woman. So we were on the same path, my friend, and we did argue that. And then I'll tell you the rest of the story later about the guy I interned with. It didn't end well for him. Turned out he was kind of a fan of the criminal law in a different way. Anywho, so back to the Menendez brothers. So what? I don't get how you're going to go in there, Garagos.
Quite a bit about you, Megan. That little tidbit might explain quite a bit about your tilt.
Right? I was like, ew, I don't want to be with these guys. I want to go on the other side.
Right.
I want you to explain what Erik wasn't allowed to testify to in trial number 2, because the first trial was a hung jury and they got let off. Then the DA brought the second trial against them for killing their parents. And the narrative has been, including by you, that they weren't allowed to testify to all the sexual abuse that they suffered in the second trial. It was much more limited. Therefore, the jury didn't get to hear how awful life was under Kitty and Jose Menendez, and you weren't allowed to really defend them in the way that you wanted. So what specifically was denied that you think was error?
Well, I believe there were 51 witnesses who the defense called. Leslie Abramson, who tried it admirably and who is still alive and was one of the great defense lawyers around. Leslie had called 51 witnesses, including experts, including family members, who testified to the range of things that were going on there. One of the things that sticks out to me is this idea that there was a rule in the household that if Jose was with one of the boys in a room down the hall, you could not go down the hall. And that is chilling to me. There were, in the second trial, literally, I want to say 20 some odd witnesses who were not allowed to testify that could not corroborate what Erik was saying. So you had this idea that by the time you got to the closing argument, you could allow, and this is exactly what happened, the district attorney to make a closing argument that said, oh, this is an abuse excuse. These are rich kids. They just wanted to inherit money. There was no corroboration. They were a bunch of whiners. In the first trial, you were able to corroborate. You were able to put on the witnesses, including family members, including experts, who corroborated all of this. And there was also a ruling and several rulings as to Lyle, which basically boxed Lyle in from being able to testify. So there was a monumental change in the rulings between trial number 1 and trial number 2, the witnesses that were allowed to be called in trial number 1 and trial number 2. And I look forward to presenting that because those are the things that are, to my mind, irrebuttable. It's factual determinations.
Here's what Hochman, the new DA, is saying, Arthur. He says to Deadline, as I said, Erik Menendez was able to testify in great detail about all the sexual abuse he experienced. He was even able to testify about sexual abuse Lyle experienced. He was even able to testify about the fact that Lyle purportedly confronted his father, their father, about this whole issue, which is why they had some level of fear that their father was going to kill them. All of that was presented to the jury, and the jury still convicted them both of first-degree murder. Now, does that sound to you like a DA who still is behind the prospect of taking another look at this case and possibly pushing to let these young men out? Well, they're not young anymore. Early.
Right. No, obviously it doesn't. But this is also a DA who's just gotten elected. I don't even know, is he even sworn in yet as the DA? I would think that would happen in the beginning of the year.
No, we've got this weird thing in LA, the county charter. He gets sworn in on December, I believe it was the 6th, which is unusual.
Okay. All right. So anyway, my understanding is he was more of the law and order guy than the last guy. So he's probably trying to flex his muscles a little bit. That I'm not going to go easy. This is right. This second, as far as us New Yorkers know, the highest profile crime in LA right now. So he probably is trying to, send the message that we're not going to be going easy on anybody. The question I think I have for Mark is, did that jury get the appropriate charge from the judge with the California equivalent of battered woman syndrome, battered person syndrome?
No, and that's the whole problem with the argument. And by the way, he being Mr. Hochman, is parroting and I understand parroting is kind of a pejorative, but he's adopted kind of a narrative of the what I call, I jokingly say the 90s are calling and they want their DA's office back. That's been the traditional mantra, if you will, of the DA's office. And, one of the things that Megan had mentioned that Marcia and I have had spirited conversations about this. Marcia was there in the DA's office at the time, in real time in the 90s. She knew what was going on. She will, at least in the green room before we get on to Megan's on-air thing, she will admit to me that, of course, they needed to win that case. They had to win it at all costs. The DA at the time was in the fight for his life. And so, there is a symbiotic
but
relationship.
Here's what she said.
Meaning they had to win this case because they had a mistrial first with the whole Menendez brothers case, and then OJ got acquitted. So they had a lot of pressure to get a conviction this second time around.
Said to me on the air, you were not there, but we had you on alone, and then we had her on alone, and I followed up. Listen.
I don't think they're going to get out. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think anybody was that impressed with Gascon's position. I wonder if people are thinking at all about the fact that there are others in prison serving a sentence of life without, which is what they're serving. That means life without the possibility of parole, who are much less culpable. I have clients that are serving life without parole right now, who never killed anyone. The defense is not, oh, daddy boinked me and mommy wouldn't stop him, so I get to kill him. It wasn't that. The defense was, daddy threatened to kill me. I believe he was going to kill me, even if you think I'm unreasonable in thinking that. I genuinely believe it because of things he said and did toward the end. Mm-hmm. That was their defense. You have a greater awareness of abuse, child abuse, and the kind of trauma it inflicts. And we are, I think, are more sensitive to that. And that's a good thing. But you have to remember that's not a license to kill. So
it's so good to talk to you because I talk to your partner in crime. He's not really, you just come on together sometimes. Mark Erik, but I know he's a friend and you guys grew up in the California legal system together. And of course, he's representing them and is 100% on the other side and came on and totally convinced me that they should be let out. Now I hear you talk and I'm like, no, these are good points. She got me, Mark. And I think she got the new guy, Hochman, too.
Remember, Megan, you tilt that way. So I'm going to bring you back to center.
What about her point about all the other more deserving guys who didn't murder anybody who have to sit their asses in prison forever?
Two wrongs don't make a right, though, Megan. Just because the system's broken there doesn't mean it should be broken everywhere. And I think
they're famous.
Exactly. Just because there might be other people in similar or worse off situations doesn't mean that you don't rectify this situation. There are probably millions of inmates who didn't get a fair shake and should have their cases reevaluated. But it just doesn't happen because of resources and whatnot. But in this particular case, we know we've done wrong. We know we need to do better. And why aren't we willing to rectify the situation is where I stand on that.
They didn't get Lifetime movies made about them, or what's his name? Was it Ryan Murphy who just redid the story?
Does that mean they shouldn't get relief just because they have a higher profile case?
Yes.
Maybe it'll help the other people. Hey, look, I'll tie it in. This was one of President Trump's.
It could set a precedent for other cases, high profile cases. So if a judge rules in a high profile case to overturn something, it could help future appeals, future cases.
Talking points when he was on the campaign trail, how the system is broken, how it needs to be looked into, how it needs to be fixed, how we can't just do business as usual, the standard thing over and over again. It's time to readjust, to basically take a deeper look. And I think Trump is leading the way. He saw how the system is broken on the state level here in New York, on the federal level. And I think it's going to hopefully have some very positive change regarding reform in the system, which is
I don't know how I feel anymore. They definitely murdered their parents. And we talked about how that is the ultimate F in parenting. So the parents have some culpability here one way or the other. There's no question they weren't ideal parents. They definitely, I believe they were abusive. And I actually believe Jose was a sexual abuser too. I do. I just think there's been, with the Menudo guy coming forward to say that he was abused by Jose too. Like, why would he have done that? Why would he say all that, all these years later? That's nothing most men want to admit, but he admitted it. So it's like, we know he was an abuser and it's not, they never do it with just one. So I do have some empathy for these young men. Go ahead.
By the way, I stand by, I know that Mr. Hochman has at least articulated that he doesn't buy it. But I will go to my grave telling you, if they were the Menendez sisters, they never would have gotten life without parole. It's just, it's a given. Anybody who's in the criminal justice system, who's honest with you, will tell you that. And
the DA, we played the soundbite. The DA in the case is on tape saying you can't rape a man. A man cannot be raped. Yeah. Which was
let me make Mark's Mark,
Don't
let me
end.
just make Mark's point. I tried a case
Arthur's
in
always
Queens,
fighting
New
for his
York.
airtime. He's like, I'll make any point I have to make just so the
Come on,
camera can
what
come
are you
back to
having me
me.
on here for? Just to look pretty? You have a handsome bald guy on here? I tried a case in Queens, New York of a young woman who cut off her father's penis, and he was screaming and yelling, so she stuffed a towel in his mouth, and he gagged to death. It wasn't the penis injury that killed him. It was the
Wow,
gagging
you really
that killed him.
dropped a whopper on us there. What? Can I get a little viewer warning,
okay.
please?
There you go. Well, I used the proper word. Like you sometimes there, Miss Kelly, who dropped some bombs. My mother yelled at me.
Talking about
talking like
castration.
that. Not listening. So anyway, the jury came back, and it was a woman. She testified. She admitted to every crime. Prosecutor, after her testimony, stood up in front of her and said, Miss Bridget Harris, you intended to cause serious physical injury to your father by cutting off his penis, correct? Yes. And when you did that, you caused his death, correct? Thank you. Those are all the elements of manslaughter in the first degree, which is a 25-year sentence. The jury came back and said, not guilty. They found her guilty of a much lower charge. She did 2.5 years in prison, and she was out. So,
See the difference between a man and a woman getting SA'd by their parents and fighting back, doing something about it? She got not guilty. These boys are in prison, life without parole. This woman cut off her father's you know what, and he succumbed to his injury down there. Yeah, and she got off.
It's somewhat similar. He had not molested her in a decade, but she saw him making moves on her 5-year-old niece. And she said, I was not going to let that happen to my niece. And I took matters literally into my own hands.
Wow. Wait, let me ask you this to finish up on a procedural note, Mark. The report by Variety was that this new DA, Hochman, just removed the 2 deputies who sought to reduce Lyle and Erik's sentences, which
Yeah, so 2 deputies that were gunning for releasing the brothers, Nathan Hochman just let go.
is no bueno for you. So he's stepping in and he doesn't seem sympathetic, but they already filed a motion asking the court to reevaluate this. So does he, is the ball already in motion? Is it too late for him to reverse course on this? This judge is going to decide right once and for all, or can he stop the consideration of it?
No, I said it publicly after the last status conference. There is a case, an appellate case in California. It says specifically a subsequent DA cannot pull back the resentencing, number one. And number two, Judge Jessic also at the last hearing invoked what is called AB 600, which is his judge-initiated ability to do it. So no, he can't call it back. Resentencing hearing is going to happen on the 30th and 31st, and it's going to be up to the judge.
That's the next big.
That's a good thing because we know Nathan Hochman's not really on our side, but the Judge Jessic has to follow the law. So a bias, Nathan Hochman not following the law, okay, we'll try the judge instead, who is basically by job description required to follow the law. That doesn't mean that we don't have a ton of biased judges out there, but according to everything, according to the brothers' records, their prison records, their behavior in prison, how they've behaved, the way that they have become the model inmate and creating all these programs and helping other inmates and doing what they have been doing just because they're trying to make something of themselves while in prison. They probably feel like they need to do something with their lives because that was always instilled in them by Jose, was to be successful. So no matter what you're doing, do it in a successful manner, put your everything into it. And I think maybe that's what the brothers are doing, is in their way to rehabilitate themselves is to rehabilitate others. And I really believe that they are doing that and helping others throughout the prison system while they're there. And I really believe that if the brothers are let out, they would do a lot of good for their fellow man and just for their society in general. They might be able to, who knows, maybe they could have their own YouTube channel and talk about and help others talk about the SA and what what challenges they've had overcoming the different things that they've had to overcome. And they could be role models to help others, which they have been. I mean, since everything became public, people were writing in and telling them, like, you've really helped me and you've made me want to stand up for myself and make me feel like I'm not alone and things like that. So they've already been kind of like the poster boys, if you will, for SA for other boys who have been SA'd, children, men who have been SA'd as boys. So they've already kind of taken that stance. And if they are released from prison, I think with social media and the way that people want them out and feel like justice is not served with them staying without parole in prison, I think they could do a lot for their fellow man. And I'll leave you guys with that. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys so much. I'll be back to normal as soon as I can. I'm gonna try to get I'm going today to record. Right after this, I'm gonna record the uh amicus the amicus curiae brief from the American Psychological Association or whatever it is. And why they think that the boys should also be released or resentenced, whatever the recommendation is. I'm not sure. I think it's to be released. I'm going in the next two episodes. We'll read through that, and then we'll read through um, the resentencing motion from George Gascon. All right. So thank you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye now.